What? What is your problem? Yeah. So Luna's down here. Just every single time I try and record videos, the cats have something to say, and it takes me a while to restart and do. And I'm starting to just include the footage of it. What are you doing? What do you what do you need? Okay. So something that struck me today that I had two things I was going to talk about, but only one of them remained in my noggin. It was about marketing, and as somebody who tries to run a business to some degree, marketing is a nutty thing for me. I always feel marketing for me is something where I feel like if I say something once, I don't have to repeat myself. But because we're consistently inundated with a bunch of content and media every single day, whether you're playing a mobile app, whether you're on any number of apps scrolling and watching and interacting, there is a lot of stuff out there and not enough time to really engage, right? And so I got to thinking, because it was even from the comments I made yesterday where, it was talking about worth applied to things. And I got to thinking about how marketing works to grab our attention and to make us want and desire things, and any number of avenues of thought for that. I sometimes have a lot of second guesses and doubts that come into play with stuff I'll put out there. I always do. I feel like maybe the marketing is slightly off in regards to, well, was this good enough for people to want to see? Is the entertainment value high enough? Is the informational content good enough? And I know that honestly, it can only be something where as time goes on, I can get better at it. Hopefully, that's the progression, right? If you sit down at a piano and you play for 1,000 days, you should be good at the end, even out of complete boredom or stress or anger throughout parts of it, because any learning scope is filled with that. You will undoubtedly get better at it, right? I know this firsthand from aspects like drawing and maybe even playing a video game, to any number of different things we try to pursue in life. Marketing, I think, is a little bit different in the respect that if you fail, you can leave that idea alone and just move on. People constantly want to see new things, for the most part. There is a conditioning we have, whether that's a love of retro or nostalgic ideologies, or it's just we've got so much else going on, it's nice to see something comforting. The comparison could be made, wow, I'm going to drive out to Nebraska and I'm going to check out all these cool places along the way. And then you inadvertently end up stopping at a McDonald's and ordering a number 2 because it's something you do back at home all the time. I've been guilty of that. I've known plenty of people that do that. I worked for a fellow one time that he took his daughter with him overseas to go see where he had been born and everything. And when they got over there, she was really upset. Didn't want to eat. I think she was 16, 17 at the time. Refused to eat. Everything was disgusting. Oh, nothing looks good. They finally went to one of the major cities in that country and found a McDonald's. And then she ate. She's totally fine with it then. And, I remember even thinking back then, damn, that is some strong-ass marketing McDonald's has going on. It's so wild. And when you're an entrepreneur of some kind, I don't care if you're, what business you're working for, not just art. There's a whole aspect where, we're consistently having to think of new ways to present what we do. Everyone does the whole gamut of it used to be this anyway. I'm probably dating myself a little bit on this, but there was a point in time where you were like, okay, I'm going to start a business. What do I got to do? I got to have some sort of social media presence. But even earlier than that, I got to have a website, which I guess is kind of a social media presence. I got to get business cards. I got to get a letterhead. I got to get stationery. I got to get, any number of things. Customized envelopes. Do I get stickers? I get stickers, right, to hand out to people. It's just nuts. And I had joined a social media network called Stimulus. And ironically, it's the one network where I'll post these videos and I get the most amount of traffic flow back from what I can tell, and the most interaction from me posting on there. I can post to my own personal Facebook page, my business Facebook page, any other place, even Twitter, and nothing. And I honestly don't know how many people follow me on Stimulus. It's a fledgling network, so there's a lot of kinks where I don't really understand why they're not, you can't tell how many people are following or whatever. It was meant to be a very grounded, creator-specific sort of interaction social media system, but it would mirror Twitter a little bit, but it's got a long ways to go. The people that are doing it, which I couldn't figure out why the name was Stimulus. It just made me think of government payments that we never got enough of. And it made me think of that, but the company that's doing it is, I think it's Sticker Mule. That's what's so crazy. Like, even in my head, I'm like, the branding was done so well that I know the name of the network, but for the life of me, I could not tell you what the actual company is that I was using. And I think it is Sticker Mule, but they don't have, there's a couple of weaknesses with it. It doesn't have a portable app. So you have to log in on your desktop or your laptop to access anything on there. So there's no way I know of alerts or interactions or anything. But on everything else, you know, it's weird to me that I had to find this small scope window to kind of delve into to promote my stuff and get some sort of thing growing from there. And then I watched a video. I got to go back and watch it again. And because I want to make sure that before I really talk through it, that it makes the sense that I think it did. And this is something very personal for me that has hurt in a lot of ways, but it's just kind of the nature of the very field I work within. But also to a large degree, what art collectors and fandoms can be like. The video does kind of a deep dive. And I think there was a lot of denial going on in my head when I watched the video. I'm like, no, fuck you. No, fuck off. That's not true. I felt like fucking Luke Skywalker when he finds out Darth Vader is his father. But no, that's impossible. No. And this individual, she goes into this whole aspect about how, you know, why aren't you getting the clicks and the likes and the follow-throughs on your posts? And a lot of it is really born upon the idea that people love the familiar. And, you know, bringing a full circle back around to what I was talking about earlier, when, you know, that young lady wanted to just go to a McDonald's in a foreign country because it was safe, because it was something she was familiar with. It was something that was deep-seated within her, and so she was able to go, well, this is safe, this is good, I know what options there are, I don't have to feel embarrassed, I don't have to fumble over a language I don't know, and maybe get something that's just, you know, you expect to get something and something else comes out and you're like, oh, I don't even like the texture of this food, or I don't like chicken, or whatever, right? And so the whole thing was, in a nutshell, essentially, from what I understand, again, I'm going to do another deep dive into the video before I talk any further about it, but it essentially was cutting it back down to the idea that because of the current state that we all live in, which is so hurried, right? I don't have time to make food. I don't have time to do this, which I have been fucking fighting left and right to get out of, right? I don't want to be on my goddamn deathbed someday being like, oh, I should have done this, should have done that. It's going to be too goddamn late. And the crazy part is that she talks about how the reason that a lot of us don't get the likes or the interactions is because when you take something that is new and it's different, or it doesn't hit all the keys the right way, it's not palatable for people immediately. And there's kind of a catch-22 and more to it that one has to understand. I'm going to put myself on the line and say that about World of Ardor. I can't tell you how many shows I've done where if I have fan art, boom, it's usually the first thing that sells. Except I got tired of that. So I did something I said I was never going to do. For any of you familiar with my artwork, my current illustration style is very much based on shadow work, shadow puppetry, and day glow sort of aesthetic. So it's sort of a love letter to the 1980s, sort of a love letter to Caravaggio, sort of a love letter to a lot of things having to do with shadow puppetry and animation and color play. And also negative space represented by a fluidity of assorted blacks. You know, black colorations go from the warm to the cool gamut and everything in between to just the blackest voids you could imagine. And I do that because I wanted the imagination of people to be captured up in that. Now, I have had the whole spectrum of reactions, from indifference to holy shit, this is fucking awesome, to I like it, but, and the ones in the middling ones are the most fucking annoying. But I listen to them critically because I want to know why. And my marketing is always a weak point with me. It has always been a goddamn weak point with me. I feel like if I talk about my stuff too much, I'm going to come off like an egotistical prick. But I also have to give some credence to the idea that, well, if I'm not talking about it, well, who the hell else is going to talk about it? Because other people have clearly got their own shit to talk about. Now, I say that, but in a lot of the ways that I think about it, I'm like, wait a minute. I genuinely celebrate when other people make cool things, and I've shared people's comments, like newsletters, they're all kinds of stuff. Like, if I think other people are going to dig something and there's a real, value towards sharing that or putting links down below or anything. I mean, if you look at the links section down below, you will see a smattering of different artists and channels on here that you should be following, that you should be interacting with, because I like them and I think they would bring something to your experience. I'm not losing anything in that. Now, whenever I create, the few times I've created fan art, I have done fairly traditional representational versions of it with my own spin. And then I did the shadow work stuff I did. And more of the shows I've done recently, I did a piece that was a couple of TIE fighters, specifically TIE Defenders. And then I did Soundwave and Shockwave, and I've done a few others, Mazinger, some different characters like that. Whenever I did them, I included them with the rest of my work. And I was always surprised how people would kind of swipe over things and they could see things that were familiar in some of my artwork because I pull a lot of different influences. If you look at my work, it's very kaiju and very Japanese robot inspired. It has a lot of mecha-based kind of concepts to it and silhouettes. It has a lot of, old 1950s science fiction horror stuff. It was a formula that I had really worked on hard to get to come together, to coalesce. And all of that was born of the fact that all of this, or the original artwork anyway, was all concept work for a video game, an independent video game I had been developing and trying to figure out and then put together in Buildbox. And when that fell apart, I was like, fine, I'm going to take this in a different direction. I'm going to tell the story of the world of Ardor through a different storyline that I hadn't really anticipated, involving humans and then the rest of the world coming into play as a fantasy realm to exist within. And whenever I did that, the first couple of shows I went to, I think I caught a lot of people off guard because we were like, oh, well, this is cool, but do you have this? Do you have this person? Do you have this? No, this isn't fan art. This is my stuff. But they were catching on to lingering things in there that reminded them of something else. I've had people come and go, oh, is that this character? Is that this character from this? Oh, that's really cool. I want to buy that because it looks like this. That's been nice. It's been okay. And at first, I didn't really announce that it was the world of Ardor. I wanted to see how the overall feel and approach of a darkened world that had only one side where the sun was shining all the time and bioluminescent life existing, this whole aesthetic I was coming up with was going to hit with people, how it was going to work over. And then I ended up releasing issue 0, which was kind of an ash can comic that I had put out there. And it is drawn in pen and ink, and it's fairly traditional in its execution, as is the current one I'm working on, the full volume 1. And thankfully there wasn't that much of a disconnect for people that could make the connection between the two, but I didn't market issue 0 as well as I should have. And finally, I think after a couple of years now, issue 0 has finally sold about 130 copies, I think. And then Ardor issue 1 has sold about 45 copies. Now, granted, it's this whole last year was debilitating on sales in general. So it wasn't just that. Nothing I had was really selling. But something I discovered along the way was that the reoccurring thing, and I was taking copious notes every show. I was making audio notes, and I was recording TikTok videos as well during that time, and talking about a lot of what I was going through and what things were like. And it wasn't great because a lot of the questions I was getting was like, this is really cool, but do you have any Naruto? Do you have any, just various things? Like, they liked the art style, but they wanted to see something familiar in it. I'm going to tell you that even with the best of marketing, it would have been a challenge to have overcome it. And this lady's video very much goes down that whole rabbit hole of how hard it is to get somebody to try something new. And it's not just art. It could be anything. It could be a brand new ride at a park. Some people are like, what? No belts? It's going to flip upside down? There's a 1,000% guarantee that I'm going to vomit? And they'll do it. I'm probably right there in that group. Then there are other people that are like, nope, I'm here for the Zambezi Zinger, and I'm going to get on that. I'm going to ride it 5 times, and I'm going to go have a corn dog at that corner place, and then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to use the restroom that's right there over there by the water fountain, so I can come out, get a drink of water, and then go sit down on the bench, which is exactly 78 feet over to the left, and go, just like I have since I was 16. There are people that they go on vacation all the time. And again, not trashing on people for this, but if I travel, yes, there are places I eventually want to go back. But if I go back to those places, I want to have new experiences and find new things. And maybe they work out, maybe they don't. There are other people that if their vacation is not identical every single year, that's a problem. I just don't get it. I have never understood that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm saying what it does do is it lends credence back into how difficult it is to be anything, any sort of entrepreneur, inventor, anything like that. The resistance to it is ridiculous. I can use a perfectly good example that goes back a few years when the seatbelt was mandated. Go look up clips of people reacting on newscasts, interviews, people talking about the downfall of democracy, that America was trash now because we were forcing people to use a utilitarian safety device that took this to do. Yet old-timers like, it's a goddamn shame in America. What's next? What's going to be next? Colored people with white people? I mean, that it literally had that sort of a fucking vibe to it. And you see that sort of shit permeate things, like, to bring this back to like pop culture and more specifically where I'm working within. You see things like that. There's a show called The Last of Us right now, and I don't know a lot about it. Many people I know play the game. That's not really my zone. I don't play those kind of games. I like cheesier games to a certain degree, or games within certain genres that just aren't that. And so I'm glad people like it, but a lot of the rabid fandom that was looking forward to the live action version wanted the exact same game. That's all they wanted. They didn't want anything else. They didn't want any derivation. They didn't want a dilution of it. They didn't want an exploration of it. They wanted X, Y, and Z. They didn't want Q thrown in there. They didn't want L. They didn't want B or T. They didn't want anything else thrown in there. Read between the lines. And what the whole thing was that when this happened, I kept thinking to myself, it didn't ruin your initial playthrough of the game, did it? Right? It didn't. Okay, so if you don't like it, then don't watch it. You can move on and do something else. We do that every day with marketing. That is what happens. Maybe I see a commercial that's annoying as hell. To this day, I can still hear, I think it was a boy band. I want to say it was NSYNC singing Baby Back Ribs for Chili's. And I sing it out loud sometimes. I'm not going to sing it right now because it's fucking embarrassing. But I sing that in my head. And then I'm like, oh, I want to go to Chili's. And I want to get that starter for $14.99 with 2 hamburgers, buffalo hot wings, and then the Southwest egg rolls. That's my jam. If I go to that fucking restaurant, that's my shit. Nothing fucking beats that, you know. And it's just if they ever take that away, I'd be like, oh god, I will finally understand the pain people went through whenever the goddamn Mexican pizza was taken from Taco Bell. I will totally understand that then. And that's how powerful marketing really can be. We know this. Even if we don't want to admit it, we know how powerful it is. We know what it can do to us. And it's fear of missing out. It's fear of change. It's all these other things that seem like magnifications of the overall aspect of our existence. Yeah, I'm going to get a little deep on you guys here. I really believe that marketers, if they're smart, people that work at companies and corporations in general, if they know what they're doing, they take the best components of what we like and they serve it to us again. I have seen that manifest in so many ways. When I was younger and I would stay up late watching television, staying up late is nothing new to this jackass. When I was young, I never went to bed before 2. It didn't matter if I had school or not. My parents were not a stickler for that. That's one of the things they're like, we're going to kick you out of bed one way or another in the morning, so stay up if you want, but you're getting on that goddamn bus. And I used to stay up late and watch infomercials. I love infomercials. That's the one thing I really miss about cable television is that, and it's stupid, right? It's insane. It's when I fell in love with like Slap Chop and ShamWow and all these other things. And like, you'd get you'd get somebody like, when Casey Kasem was still alive, I'm almost certain he was the one, and I seem to remember this. It could be an amalgamation of a bunch of stuff, but you would see him hosting with somebody else, like maybe the mom from Leave It to Beaver or something like that. And you'd see like, it would be like right after the end of a movie or something, and you knew it was the last programming of the night, and he'd come on, and he was like, do you remember back when, in the 1950s, whenever this was a hit? I used to think to myself, like, that's amazing. And it was really cool because my dad was really big in the 1950s music. My mom was more of a 60s kid. And watching that, just the way they did it, like the set pieces had a 57 Chevy, and it had a jukebox and like a chocolate shop in the back, like a malt shop. It had, and they were even kind of dressed up like right off the set of a lot of those things, like, Father Knows Best and all, or no, what is it? My Three Sons. That's the show I was thinking of. Just all of these old retro aspects. And the marketing was so tight, and it made you really appreciate these greatest hits from that. And they would be like, we've got it available on vinyl and compact disc now. And then they also sold it on cassette. But I remember how they made such a big deal about even the compact disc aspect. And I know I've seen that video somewhere on YouTube, because the woman's like, compact disc, you mean CD? That's right. You can get even more music put on this compact disc. It holds, like, I think he said like 30 of your greatest hits, that you're from your memories on here. And it was really nuts. And I think about that, and that is the same sort of crazy, polarizing, rapid fire sort of thing that we hear today. Except that it's not coming from icons from the 1950s. It's coming from everybody. I heard something in another YouTube video about how basically everyone has a hustle today. Now, we could go into the whole factor that because of the economy, because of lowered wages, because of a growing, wanton disrespect for what the worth of our time, our livelihood is, in exchange for money, for benefits, whatever. There's such an ill-regarded balance there. And I'm constantly surprised by how strong marketing can be, because if for some reason a company was taken down, which is rare that anything like that would ever happen, but if it was taken down and it cost somebody the ability to have something, imagine right now, I'm going to put this out there right now, imagine if tomorrow Amazon ceased to exist. Think about that. Think about that for just a moment. How many people would be left out to dry? There would be people without jobs. Number one, right? Unemployment would be insane. Bezos is fine. He'd go, get on a rocket ship, float around the earth, and, fuck oysters or whatever the fuck he does. Wearing a big-ass cowboy hat like all those stupid-ass CEOs tend to wear. But the rest of the people that worked for him, right beneath him and below, would not be all right, especially the groundling. And then everybody else, you, me, and everybody else that relies on getting anything from Amazon. What the fuck? I know people that get their medications because of Amazon, like things like medical strips and like other stuff like that. I know people that's how they shop. That's how they keep in touch with their family. That's what they choose to use as a streaming service for entertainment. And we've let it happen. We've let these things come together. Look at Disney. It's eating everything. Everything. And I'm not a huge Disney stan super fan, but I am somebody that's like, well, I do kind of like what they're doing, you know? And because of that, and because I do like some of the stuff that they're creating and they're making, and, you know, and then they're eating up other stuff that I've liked as well too, you're left with this whole thing of like, wow, the marketing is really addictive because I'm willing to pay for a streaming service, you know, and because of that, I'm able to watch these things. But I'm also somebody who believes in having my stuff on DVD and things like that, or have copies of it however I can get it. You wonder why piracy ends up starting to come into the equation. Because after a while, you're like, well, I can't afford these prices, I can't afford this, and if I can get it for free, I will. It's going to lead to a whole Napster situation all over again. But since it really doesn't affect Metallica this time, I think everything's going to be okay. I would love to see Lars Ulrich, the drummer of Metallica, get into it with Disney. You're stealing from us again. That's a stupid ass accent. I actually don't know what he sounds like. I remember whenever that whole thing happened, I could not get his voice out of my head. Now, I think I blocked all of that. I could never do an impersonation of him if I wanted to. It's a really fucked up, terrible time. Oh man. So yeah, that's a really long-winded way to say that basically, whenever we start thinking about, or at least whenever I start thinking about, like how weird everything has gotten, I wonder what the next 10 years are going to be like. Whenever I watch Futurama, one of my favorite episodes, and it's in the later seasons, which wasn't as well received. By the way, that's some really good news. Sometimes, and okay, I'm going to do two different tangents here. I'm going to come back to this, but no, I'm going to finish this first and then jump to that. Look at how ADHD. I sound like I'm a fucking television. Does it come in ADD? Is it SD? HD? 4K? What the fuck does he have? I often think that, you know, just like the announcement that both Futurama and King of the Hill are coming back, right? I think they're both on Hulu. And that to me is freaking wild. I thought Futurama, though, because it was a Fox creation, those studios, was going to be a Disney product, which it might be. I don't really know. It's interesting to see these things get farmed back out and to come back. And I think for the most part, almost all of the voice actors are alive for these productions, and I'm hoping the stories will hold up. But going back to Futurama, there was an episode in the second time it was renewed, I believe, the third time it was renewed, that we saw an episode that was called iPhone, and it was a phone they shoved into your eye, and it put a HUD display in front of you and everything. And I was like, we're heading that way. We're heading in that direction. Wall-E by Pixar does a similar thing. You're literally force-fed this information via your screen. And if you think about it, that's exactly what's happening right now as you're watching my video. And everyone stops watching. So, I mean, it's just the truth, you know? Right here in the background, I'm watching through one of my old playthroughs, just trying to remember where I was in this game. And I thought to myself, you know, I love watching stuff like that, and it does take up some time in my life. But at the same time I'm watching this, I'm kind of halfway watching it, or I'm working on other things. But the marketing deems me, you know, in my own head, like, you know, what can I do to improve these things that I did? Could I be more entertaining? Could I include cutscenes? Could I talk more about the history of the game? Could I do other things? Because that's what I'm aiming toward in my marketing. Like, hey, I'm going to be something of a video game historian. I'm going to talk about the art direction. I'm going to talk about maybe what voice actors were involved, and talk to the strengths that I know to give something different out there by the time I decide to start streaming, or if I just keep on making YouTube content. How can I make myself stand out from the crowd, from this wall of information coming to you guys? And this channel is a perfectly good example of it. I have had a YouTube channel for 10 years, and I have 92 subscribers. I don't blame the subscribers. I do blame my content. Is it good enough? Do I market it enough? Do I share it enough? Do I have an idea what the hell I'm doing? I sure as hell hope so. Okay, that's enough of an update for tonight. This was This is one that had definitely been stuck in my head for a while. And it's crazy too, because some of these are actually subjects that I had anticipated trying to do. I did not get a podcast episode out this last month. I really had planned on it, and I had this whole plan for how I was going to do it, what was involved, who was going to be helping me out on it, and everything, and it just didn't come to bear. And if you guys had been following, for any of you that had followed my YouTube channel for a long time, I had these interview cards from a few years ago. I don't even remember where I got these things, but I love them because it's just the most random things. But they ask you questions that are really messed up because they're kind of semi-personal. Like, I'll just show you guys a couple of examples of what I was going to use. A question of, like, if I'm in an interview, what don't you have enough time to do and why? You know? What are the 3 most important things that children should be taught in school? I love how they're written because depending on if I'm interviewing somebody who's, really into that or not, they could be, I'm not comfortable answering that, or, I'm going to tell you what they need. Maybe Jesus. What would you do if you won the lottery? And I had all these ideas too. Like, I was going to like try and play characters in when I was doing this. This was going to be audio, and like, because I always think that's funny. Like, just have the other person, maybe just play themselves, right? And I could be different interviewers. And so like, like this one, maybe I don't know, like, what are you the most scared of losing? And what would you truly lose if you lost it? And then like listen to their answer, something like that, and say, so what you're saying is you need more Jesus in your life. Just something stupid like that. But I decided, you know what, I'm probably going to take a much more serious vein with it. It's interesting because I'll watch other people's content. That's always a danger zone, right? You start watching other people's shit, and you go, well, they're doing really good. Can I copy them? And I don't want to. That's not in the books. I don't want to copy anyone. I want to do the best I can for myself. And hopefully, people will come around my table and they'll be like, oh, wow, what is this World of Art shit? Yeah, fuck the TIE Fighter. What is this? Because that's eventually what I hope will happen. Here's to dreams coming true. Ooh, I like that. I like that. I think I'm going to add that to my videos. You know what? There are times whenever like too much of my internal comes out right there. Like, I don't normally talk like that in person, but that epiphany right there. I'm glad I was recording it. Holy shit. Because I just forgot what I said. All right, guys. I'll catch you in the next episode. Do you remember the Shondells? Do you remember Richie? I just forgot his name right now. I was like, Richie, you better think of the name. You better think of the name. You better think of the name. Richie Valens. And, and he would go through this whole thing. That's fucking embarrassing that I would forget that man's name. Come on, La Bamba. Shit, I hope nobody Hispanic watches this video. I'm fucked if they do.